So I'll continue a little bit on this regarding talking to ISP regarding another project that we in Netnod is running together with the IIS, the .SE registry. And then after that, we can, if we have some time, we can come back to talk about like how we're supposed to increase the quality of internet in Sweden. The project itself is myself, the CEO of IIS, and then we have Nicky Digo at Netnod that is the project lead on this. So what is the problem that we are looking at? And that is basically that you have seen, just like myself, that and many others, that all these access providers are selling broadband, and they are selling this and that, and they talk about various different kind of things. And of course they can mean whatever they want with the advertisement, which of course is a good thing, because we have competition, and you can buy whatever suits you if you understand what they say and if you can make a choice. Sometimes you cannot choose. Like the day when I actually get fiber to my home, I will probably have exactly one provider to choose from. And if it is the case that I have more than one, it's probably the case that we have the fiber owner is probably also the monopoly regarding active equipment in the network, which means that if you choose between ISP A or B, it doesn't really matter. It's the same kind of fruit that you get out of the access anyways. So we need a little bit more clear taxonomy. and one of the positive things is that no one in Sweden is really selling internet access. That's a good thing. Because I think if we compare to other countries, and this is really, really, really important, we in Sweden do actually have pretty good access. So when we buy whatever is called broadband, whatever it is, mobile data and whatever, it's actually pretty damn good compared to many other places in the world. It's actually good. and from IIS and Netnod's perspective, we feel that it's really important that we do these definitions before the definition itself impacts the products that are provided on the network. So what I mean is that if we come up with the definition today, probably 90% of all access products that exist on the market in Sweden will actually pass. So the good thing is that if we define this today, ISPs might, and don't tell them, they might be able to charge more for something they already sell. Okay? That's the business case. There are two sort of real other real interests that we should remember for internet access. One is that we have a lot of not private entities, but like companies and public sector that are procuring what ends up being internet access, and they invent their own RFQ and their own requirements for the access. And I'm looking at Poi here. I know that we worked at Tele2, and he was coming like every week with like, he was laughing so much when people sort of wanted to buy this and that, and to be able to deliver exactly what you had there, you had to not only change gravity, you also had to change the speed of light and a few other things to be able to deliver, which means that whoever is trying to buy internet access, the clue level is not that high, so they invent their own taxonomy, and it makes it really hard to deliver. So that makes the actual selling negotiation process really expensive. And it would be easy to actually, it would be possible to save money there, to have good definitions. Once upon a time, IT-kommissionen actually did a specification in the year 2000. Unfortunately, that was sort of a desktop exercise, nothing more, never really used. So this time, we said already from the beginning that it's not okay with just step one. We need already from the beginning to imagine that there will be one step with some kind of implementation of software and whatnot, so it's possible for people to actually check what they got, at least for the parameters that are actually measurable. And the second thing is that we need some kind of organization or some way of updating this specification, because over time, like rules, things change, right? So it's quite important to be able to update the specification, just like they did with monitors. You have the TCO 98 and TCO 99 and whatever. So we could end up with sort of Internet Access 2018, Internet Access 2020, etc., that have better definition. So the ability to actually redevelop and review the definition itself over time is pretty important when you think about that. basically the business case for the definition itself. So what is we're looking at? Well, we're looking at different parameters that define internet access. And as we all know, we have these bredbandskollen, and people talk about megabits per second, and that's what they use to define whether they are what people are buying and selling. And this is not really sort of good enough, because there are other things that might be important. For example, do you have IPv6 packets? Do you support manners? Is it possible to send IP addresses, IP packets with a spoofed source IP address? Can I send DNS queries to any destination? What is the MTU? What is the round trip time? And whatnot. There are many of these things that might be important for private persons, and there are many of these variables that might be important for enterprises or public entities when they are procuring access. So what we are trying to do is come up with parameters and actually come up with the name and the specification, and also a definition of how this is measured. So for example, if you talk about, well, you should be able to, the MTU should be this. What do you mean? Just in the access? Or is it sort of the whole path? The whole path to what? It's quite important to talk about these kind of things. And then we have the last thing, which is like, okay, given that you have this name, this specification, and this is how it's measured, what is the actual minimum requirement for this to be internet access? So we have this minimum requirement, which is really, really, really baseline, because we do believe that all of this is actually something that on ordinary access should be okay in Sweden. Of course, there are some cases, for example, in some access networks where kommunikationsoperatör or the owner of the building that have the actual last mile in apartment complexes, they might have some equipment that actually make it impossible for the ISP to deliver whatever they want to deliver. And that's another sort of important thing that this specification could be used for, that the ISP say, okay, I'm happy to deliver in your network, but if you do something with my signal so that I cannot deliver according to this minimum requirement, in that case, I'm not going to pay. So sort of an ability for the ISP and access ISP to negotiate with whoever is handling the transmission in the last mile. So anyway, so really baseline. But given that we have this specification, it's possible for example, the gaming community to come up with some other definitions, or Webhallen have their own definition or whatever, which is high level on some of these. So the important thing are the three. First one, lower priority is the actual minimum requirement. But on the other hand, if someone is saying, I deliver internet access, what does it really mean? So at the end of the day, there will be recommendations or something that is, there will be some must be, otherwise it's kind of useless, right? So there are various different kind of things that I already talked about, all these kind of things. The buy-sell process costs a lot, and just having the definition so we know what we talk about when we say MTU is actually kind of good. For example, some people use the term jitter. Is that a term we should use? And if we do, what does it mean? Bandwidth, what does that really mean when you talk about packets and light in a fiber? Now we're coming back to the old-fashioned definition of bandwidth, right? That you count in hertz and not in bits per second. So the end goal is to come up with a specification which is sort of an update of what was done in 2000, and on the other hand, make this definition as generic as possible. We have got the questions now and then whether the specification is something where definitions can be used outside of Sweden. And the goal is, no, we are defining it for Sweden, but possible to use elsewhere. So we are looking at other projects as well. We, just like Särimner, we are looking at having a logo. And as we don't have a logo, we don't really know whether we can continue. So we probably need a cute animal, like fur thing or like, I don't know. Not the goat. There are so many people, including me, that works with the budget at the moment, so with tied up goats. That was a Swedish boring joke. I'm sorry, I'm not going to explain that. Okay, I'm not going to do that. So anyways, so what is the status at the moment? So we do have a preliminary set of definitions, And this set of definitions currently have been discussed in the various working groups that we have in the project. It is also discussed with various individuals. The situation at the moment is that we have a discussion with the ISPs that suddenly discovered that, oh, wait a second, you are now on your way to define things that might have a positive or negative, or we don't know, impact on our products, access products. So the current situation is that we in the steering group, myself, Ellen, my CEO, and Dan is CEO of IAS, we will meet with the ISPs in mid-December and talk with them. They think the definitions are good, just like I just explained. They are very nervous over this baseline definition, which I do understand. I've been working for an ISP all my life, and I don't want a third party putting hamstrings and restrictions on what products I deliver. I want to have as much freedom as possible for that, so I really understand this. But on the other hand, this is a discussion that we need to have, that we were expecting already from the beginning. So I think it's a healthy discussion. We also have a discussion within Swedish Operators Forum with the ISPs, because one of the things that we from Netnod and IAS completely agree on is that we are not going to make a definition that we are shoveling down the throat of the ISPs. We need to have both the consumers and like the members of SNUS and ISOC-SE and the ISPs walking along the same path in the same direction, just like you have been doing with the Manners project for many, many years. So if it is the case that we end up with a clear definition this year, and then we have to pause and not really develop the tool and move forward until like a year from now or something, so we have a pause, then that's what we are going to do. Because just moving forward without having everyone on board is not something that is healthy, I would think. Can you pause on the microphone, Hugo? Just behind you.
Thank you.
So, Dan.
Yes. I'm replacing a lot of routers for ISPs to better routers. What we are finding bad from the ISP side is documentation. Are there any requirements to that? For example, which VLAN is the TV signal coming in for? And how should we point that to their TV box, for example? And other things like that. How do we set up IPv6? How do we do this? Do we provide a static IP? Things like that. Documentation.
At the moment, I look a little bit on Hugge, and there's no specification, no requirements on documentation today, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
Some of it.
Yeah, some of it. So yes, obviously I'm involved in this stuff as well.
But of course.
Yeah, and been writing a few of these myself. I would say that yes and no. Maybe not exactly on, access point connections. No, I don't think we have any hard specification exactly how you plug it in, because the access point can be different depending on what type of ISPs you are, right?
Yes, but VLAN for TV is a big thing.
Right.
It's hard to find with any ISP.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's something we could look at for sure. The things documentation-wise, because there is a whole of these baseline things, which is more of a documentation thing than any other. Like, for example, the NAT thing.
Yeah.
That was a big discussion. It's like, is it wrong with NAT? No. I mean, it makes sense to have NAT in some places, as long as everyone knows that you're getting a NATed connection and exactly how that NAT works. And there's a lot of more of those as well, which is more of a documentation point than a measurable baseline.
Yeah. So one of the things that have been discussed, I don't know how much, is, for example, when you deliver the service, should it be on the south side or the north side of the CP? And the answer is then, it depends on whether the CP is included in the service or not. And what I think sort of the conclusion is that in 95% of the cases, the CPE is included in the service. So for the majority of the users, it's not so important what's on the north side, but it's on the south side of the CP, what is actually delivered there on the internet access. So the specification gives some freedom there, but has focused on this CP being included. And that's also another reason why the issues that you talk about, which is replacing the CP with something that is yours, have been downgraded in importance in the discussion. But we're not done yet, so you can participate yourself and inject some views on how to move forward. Please, yes.
A follow up on. Does this work? Yeah. follow up on this. I think one thing, I'm coming back to ISN obviously, but one thing I didn't mention is why I also think these ideas are good is a management perspective of this, like this VLAN thing, for example. If that service that you're going to connect had a globally unique name that was independent of any operator, anything, you just plug that in, and that would make things easier.
Sure.
If everything have a global unique name, we would be done, right? Okay, there's another, pause the microphone over there. Yeah. No, Börje, you're absolutely right, and people laugh about it, but I think it's important that we in this room, like with a lot of engineers and other users that really want things to work, we should allow ourselves to say these kind of things. So, yeah.
No,
but then we have to step on, like, come back to the reality now and then.
Whenever we're done with IPv6, we take ICN, right? So as soon as I'm done with that, when everyone has IPv6, then I'm going to make sure that everyone has ICN to their home connection as well. So we have to wait it out.
Yeah, we have a question there. Yes.
Two questions actually. The first one is, have you looked into defining if the service is censored, like filtered, or something is not included in the service, like, the DNS you don't want to be able to access with different sites and stuff. The second question is, have you looked into what happens if, like, there is a power outage, and how long should that be, and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I happily answered the first question because that's been taking a lot of my time and everyone else's time as well, because I'm part of the routing security working group here in this case. So yes, the whole net neutrality and also good filtering, whatever you want to call it, is a big part of this. The good thing is that there is already quite good guidelines out there from BEREC, for example, that has already released, especially around net neutrality, because that's a hot potato no one want to touch, especially with ongoing court cases for a lot of the ISPs currently, right? For example, TLA is in court, TRI is in court, others are in court as well. So this is sensitive stuff, right? But BEREC has really good guidelines for this, which I think makes sense. That some filtering is good, for example, local filtering, so that you can't do a broadcast within your access segment. I mean, that makes sense, and everyone wants this, even the customers. For example, so that I can't reach the bonjour of my neighbor, for example, in a city network. That would be very bad. There is some filtering regarding mail servers. Essentially, what most ISPs are doing today, or the good ones are doing today, they probably should continue doing that for stability of the service. And yes,
regarding electricity and power, we have recognized that PTS do already have requirements on power. That is a combination of how many end users are impacted with a power outage. And because of that, the project has not really wanted to go into sort of overstepping the rules that the regulator already have.
Rather inherit them.
We inherit them, yes. Of course, from an end user perspective, ends up being problematic because at the end of the day, at the edge, the CPE is just the CPE. It's only one unit, and we know that the regulator's requirements has to do with a power outage need to impact, I don't know whether it's 2,000 entities or 2,000 access providers, which means that maybe it has to do with the head end or whatever kind of system it is. So this is, at the moment, the system is the definition is inheriting the requirements that the regulator already have, and sort of stayed away from coming up with the project's own ones. But that's another thing that you can participate in and come with suggestions. Jan.
Another thing is that there is, as Patrik mentioned a little bit before, that there's a lot of different types of fibers out to different places in both Sweden and in other places in the world. So you have you can't deliver the same quality to every area. I mean, you have different dependencies of the cable operator that can make a different thing. And another thing when you said it's about power outage, I think another much bigger problem is that a lot of people are turning on to use IP telephony via fiber, and then they don't have any UPS at home, and that one will probably shut down much more often than the power on the main switch at the operator.
Absolutely. But what we are looking at is, for example, as I mentioned, we are looking at things on the north side of the CPE. So what we're looking at, what we're trying to focus on, has to do with the power of, for example, the kommunikationsoperator, or for example, if you have a building complex with apartments, things that are out of control of the end user. That the end user should have a UPS on the CPE and other kind of things. That is more of an information campaign. It's not something that we believe that the ISP or access provider should take responsibility for. But you're right that we need to have all of these things. But as I said, the regulator requires the ISP to have certain things. But then you have a gap between the end user. So even if I put a UPS on my CPE, it might not be enough. And that is what we're looking at. But then, of course, we need to have the information to the end user as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so on the first question, I guess I have to answer it. So it is the product is completely transparent to what the delivery method is. It doesn't matter if it's fiber, cable, ADSL, DOCSIS, wireless, air fiber, or whatever stupid things people come up with, right? It can be whatever. I mean, it can be of a barbed wire. The only thing that's interesting in the end is the result for the customer. I mean, that is the only thing that the product cares about. Whatever method you use to get out of there doesn't matter, right? So, I mean, if you have an old fiber network, if you're running PON network or whatever, and you can't deliver certain services, then you can't deliver those services.
Yeah. So, for example, today you see the large difference between Ethernet-based and PON-based access networks, for example, for fiber, which might be a difference. Yes.
Power outage is only one.
It works, so go on.
It's work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It's only one problem for the end user. Do you have any requirements on uptime and time to repair and so on in this?
Yes, they've been discussing both the ability to the time to repair, but also the ability to report. And there have been discussion whether the ISP, the access provider, should be required to monitor, or whether it's enough to just have the ability for the end user to report, because requiring ordinary sort of vanilla CPEs for like 200 Swedish kronor a month, requiring that the ISP is actually monitoring each one of those ISPs when there are so many home users, which the last thing they do when they go to bed is to turn everything off, including the CPE. That's not uncommon. So the last time when I listened into the discussions, because I'm trying to run this project, I'm not really the person like Hugge, the feeling was that no, there cannot be a requirement that the CP is monitored by the ISP. It more has to do with after you as an end user have reported it, what is the restoration time? And I think at the moment it is information that should be informed, so the end user know what they get.
But the problem is discussed and will be
absolutely.
Yes.
It is discussed, yes. And I ask all of you that have interest now, please send mail to Nikki@netnod.se and participate.
And there's plenty of open space for people to come in and actually join this and have opinions. I mean, there's
specifically if you have time to type.
I mean, IAS has really big conference rooms, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm quite surprised though that no one asked the real question: will IPv6 be mandatory in this? And yes, it will be. And most likely also manners as well. That you actually have manners-like principles if you want to be able to provide a proper internet access. So that could be good for some ISPs to start working on that already.